Okay, so today I'm going to make a video about preparing your loved ones for your prison sentence. This is tricky. This is hard. First and foremost, as soon as you're aware, you know that you are most likely going to prison, you definitely need to make sure, if you haven't already, that your inner circle is aware of this. The person who you will be having as your point of contact person, which is something you should keep in mind if you're even doing anything in your life that may lead to prison, yet alone when you realize that the ball is rolling in that direction. Some of my other videos about preparing for federal prison, I actually talk about, what is your point of contact person, why you need them, why they're important, how to choose them, that kind of thing. So you can reference back to that if you're not caught up with that aspect. But definitely, by the time you've signed your plea deal, people in your life, not necessarily your neighbors or even your coworkers, but need to know you're going to prison. Your friends, your family, your children, your parents, those kind of people. I know for me, I'm trying to get a lot of things, medical things, out of the way before I go to prison, because I know once I'm in prison, I will receive extremely substandard to pretty much non-existent medical care, because that's what people in prison get in this country, contrary to urban legend. But when I talk to my doctors or my dentist, and I talk about, I have a short window of time to get things done, so I need people to move quickly, I'm going to prison. And when they say, you're going to prison. Now to these people, I say, oh yeah, there was a little misunderstanding between me and the IRS, so I'm gonna go to prison for a little while. And we all kind of smile or laugh it off, or they go, oh man, yeah, that's. And I say that not because I'm going to prison for anything tax related, because I'm not. But this is something that in their world is fairly normalized and is not scary. The important thing here is, generally when a person is accused or takes a plea on a crime or becomes convicted of a crime, most crimes fall into one of two categories for the people around them, for the general public, and even for the judge. Crimes that scare people and crimes that make people angry. For me, in a professional type situation, like trying to, get my doctors to be a little more expeditious, I just, imply pretty directly that, that I'm having I have a tax issue that has led to this situation. Because I know that's something that doesn't make these people angry and doesn't scare them. Matter of fact, it's something that a lot of them probably find somewhat relatable. The truth of the matter, and my, you guys, of course, and, my immediate circle, my friends and family are very much aware, is, I was charged with a drug crime. My actual crime was using a communications facility to facilitate drug trafficking. Um, but you definitely, want to, now you're probably wondering, like, how do I inform people? How do I prepare them? First off, you need to ask yourself, other than just being a text or a phone call, for day-to-day interaction or emotional support, what are you actually bringing to people's lives? And you need to figure out a game plan for how you're going to make sure the needs that you are meeting for those you love continue to be met in your absence. I know for me, I have two children. I have a young adult child, and I have a much, much younger child, a 4-year-old. And I have, three parents, two elderly parents. Well, my parents are elderly, but two parents who are rather ill, And then I have one who has some health issues, but I mean, he's going to be fine. I could go away for 10 years, he'd still be fine. But, for me, a lot of preparing my loved ones for my prison sentence wasn't even about having that conversation. Because for me, the incident that, kind of started the domino effect that led to the, me being sentenced in a couple months for my time in federal prison was my house getting raided, which was very public. And, it was all over the news and, whatever. It was a big deal. And of course, other homes were raided. My house was targeted, and then two other locations were targeted at the same time in connection to certain things. But so it was very public. I mean, there was no no sugarcoating, no, how do I tell people, my loved ones that I'm having some legal issues. They knew whether I wanted them to know or not. Now, of course, initially my house was raided, state press charges. They never indicted me. Charges eventually got dropped. And then a couple months later, the Fed sent me a target letter. And now I'm in the position I'm in now where I'm about to go to federal prison. So it's crazy because for a year and a half, I was on bond. And then, just constantly mentally and emotionally kind of trying to prepare myself and my loved ones for me to potentially go to prison. And the charges got dropped. Then there was like a 2-month window where I could breathe, where I was making my home, comfortable again, where I was getting settled, where I started planning my future, and I was happy. And I finally, that constant anxiety of, oh my gosh, I'm about to go to prison, I got to prepare, was lifted. And then boom, target letter. And here we are, what do they say, out of the frying pan into the fire? Now, with your children, if your children are old enough to understand the concept of prison and such, you need to convey to them that what is happening, no matter their age, you need to convey to them what is happening is not their fault. There's nothing they can do to stop it. That you did not commit criminal acts to be away from them. That, for young children, and there's a saying, God is at the foot of a mother, for the child, that's where God lies. Because, small children think that we as parents, as adults, can do whatever we want. And if there's something we don't like, we can do something about it and change it. And that's not always, sometimes you get to a point where that's no longer the case. That's not always the case. So I know my eldest child understands what's happening. She understands it's not her fault. She knows that this was in no way, shape, or form. If I thought that there was any real risk of me going to prison, would we even be in this position? My youngest child, not so much. My youngest child's very confused. Shortly after my house was raided, I don't want to get into details too much, only because, it could harm me in future litigation. But, my youngest child's father suddenly wanted to be in his life. Matter of fact, he not only didn't want to be in his life, he wanted full custody. Right after my house was raided, which, by the way, when your house is raided, drugs are found, CPS always comes out. CPS came, they did a walkthrough, they interviewed, my kids, they talked to some family, and they said there's no reason to even open an investigation. These children are extremely well taken care of. They're not in danger. My children were with my cousin, who's an employee of the state, during my 10 days in regional, where they had their own bedrooms and all of that. So, there was never an issue of either my children being in any type of actual harm's way or being subjected to anything they shouldn't have been. But, and of course, my house got raided, and during the 10 days I'm in jail is when the first child support hearing comes up as well. And at this child support hearing, to establish child support, is when my youngest child's other parent decided they suddenly would just rather have full custody. And they were suddenly so concerned. But I'll leave that alone. But my youngest child, I don't know what's being told to my youngest child, because the custody situation right now is 50-50 half the time. 2 weeks a month he's with me, 2 weeks a month he's with his other parent. I don't know what's being said in my absence, when the child is away from me. But I know the child clearly has the idea that, perhaps I'm abandoning them. Perhaps I don't love them. Perhaps, me going away is a result of some type of behavioral problem that they've displayed, or inadequacies, which none of which is true. And I reiterate to my youngest child all the time, I love you immensely. I miss you when I'm not with you. You make me happy. You're my best friend. I will always come back for you. Even if it seems like a long time, just know that I'm always on my way back, because, when I go to prison, unfortunately, me and my family won't be able to have any contact with my youngest child. And, I'm very fearful for what this is going to do to that child, emotionally and mentally. And that's without even factoring in, whatever foolery is going on, in the environment they're in during that time. But once I get out, particularly once I'm out of the halfway house and actually have a leg to stand on, I will certainly be trying to get back custody, at least 50-50, if not full. I'm not choosing to abandon my children. I'm not choosing to leave my loved ones in a vulnerable position. At this point, hindsight is 2020, but what is done is done, and we gotta embrace the now and move forward. So, in preparing your loved ones for your prison stay, you need to definitely have some very, very candid, just very direct talks. And here's the thing too. It's very easy when you find yourself in a position where you're heading to prison, particularly for the first time, particularly if you have dependents, or you feel somewhat kind of railroaded in the situation, or targeted, or you feel like it's really not correct what's happening as far as you going to prison. It's very easy to feel sorry for yourself. A lot of people want to feel sorry for themselves and woe is me. But here's the thing. Just like it harms you mentally and emotionally, and to be going to prison, you got to think more so about the people in your life that you love, the people who will likely be there for you throughout your incarceration or when you come home, or both. That are harmed, that are hurt by the fact that you're about to be incarcerated. Now is not a time to sit around and pity pat and feel sorry for yourself. Now is a time to, whether you're the weakest person on the planet and you're just a woe is me victim mentality type person, now is the time for you to man up or woman up and just say, look, I'm in this situation, by some fault of my own. I'm sorry I'm in this situation. But, you need to put on a happy face. You need to put on a strong face. Because if your loved ones see that you're scared, you're overwhelmed, you're feeling sorry for yourself. If they see these things from you, more so than not, that's only going to make things harder for them. And don't be selfish like that. Don't do that. Now is not a time for you to be selfish. And if you're that selfish that you're harming those that love you by trying to play a victim, and by trying to really kind of push the burden on them of your situation mentally or emotionally, then maybe they shouldn't keep in contact with you. Maybe they should just leave your butt and be done with you. Because personally, if one of my loved ones was getting incarcerated, God forbid, which, I've had plenty of loved ones incarcerated. Heck, I got loved ones incarcerated. But if these people ever tried to do the woe is me routine, all the way up to their incarceration, throughout their whole incarceration, and really just, it became burdensome and overwhelming and just completely unpleasant to be supportive to them, it is only within reason that a person will stop being supportive when it gets to a point where being supportive becomes, a dark cloud that follows you around all day. So you need to not let yourself become that. Another thing people do, other than the woe is me routine, when they realize they're going to prison, is a lot of people just kind of stick their head in the sand. They kind of feel like, I got a good paid lawyer, or they feel like, what's going to happen is going to happen. But for right now, I'm just going to go enjoy life and kind of pretend this isn't happening. Or I'm just going to go on with my normal life. And, whenever I get sentenced to prison, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. These are very self-defeating mind states. These mind states will do you no favors. And more importantly, they will do no favors for your loved ones. And preparing your loved ones for prison, I've been very open with the fact of, this is my strategy. This is my game plan for leading up to prison. Right now, in a couple of days, I'll be completely moved out of my home. I'm moving in with family to save a little bit of money to ease the amount of burden that I'm putting on people with my incarceration. Because, you're not, you may be a victim of circumstance, you may be a victim of the injustice system, but at the end of the day, you took your plea deal or you were found guilty. It is what it is. You're no longer a victim at this point. Were you a victim in other aspects of your legal situation? Perhaps. But in this moment, right now, you're not a victim. You can choose to not be a victim. And if you choose to be a victim, you are choosing to mentally and emotionally victimize those who love you. And that is not okay. It is not okay for you to not even in the doors of prison already just make yourself an albatross around everybody's neck. And then you expect these people to joyfully, ride this out with you? Probably not. Just heads up, probably not. You need to, if you have loved ones you caretake for, whether it be physical needs, financial needs, whether it's just day to day, taking them shopping to appointments and stuff, you need to immediately and proactively try to enlist Try to find resources for them to utilize to get these needs met in your absence. Maybe try to enlist one or two close friends or other relatives to kind of take over that role. You need to start transitioning your loved ones into how their life will be affected once you're incarcerated. For example, I have someone very close to me, who depends on me for certain things. And I have someone else close to me who has agreed to kind of take over the role I play in the day to day. And I have been trying to kind of socially mesh these two parties together as much as possible. I've even kind of deflected some of my typical responsibility onto the person that's going to kind of take over that responsibility, just so the two parties can get comfortable, as comfortable as possible in these new roles prior to my incarceration. And also for my own peace of mind, so I can see that this is actually feasible. Another thing you can do to prepare your loved ones for your incarceration is, don't leave a burden behind. Even if you're a person who said, okay, you know what, I took my plea deal, I was found guilty. It is what it is. My innocence, my guilt is irrelevant at this point. Legally, I'm going to prison. I took the plea deal because it was the best choice on the table, all things considered, or I was found guilty. Either way, I'm going to prison. Legally, I've done whatever, whether I did it or not. So, you need to, to really make sure your people know your plan. That's part of preparing them. My people know my game plan. My game plan is very straightforward. My game plan is going to sentencing, pray that I get to do my time on home confinement, but I know that pretty much never happens in the Fed. So we know that is not likely, and to not really invest much hope in that. But, I'm looking at up to 4 years incarceration. My thought is, my hope is I'll get a year and a day, 2 years, 3 years. But I'm thinking worst case scenario, if I get the 4, my people know what prison I'm going to ask to be sent to. I'm going to ask my judge make a recommendation to. I'm going to have my lawyer ask I'll be sent to. Not that guarantees what prison you're going to go to. With the feds, they can put you anywhere in the country. They're supposed to try to keep you within 500 miles of your home. They completely don't even care at all about that. The only time that even matters to them is when you're going to a halfway house. They'll make sure your halfway house is within 500 miles of your home or your home place, because a lot of people will find themselves coming out of prison with no home. Whatever your home was, wherever it was when you were arrested, that's where your home is for the sake of all things federal. They know that, there's a halfway house, a couple hours from here. There's one a little bit further. There are a few actual federal halfway houses within a couple hour range. The nearest one that actually accepts women, I believe, is about 2.5 hours away. I know the city and state, my family know. They know this is where I'll most likely go do my halfway house time. When I come home, who I'm going to be staying with, how long I'm going to be staying with them. All of that has been planned out. All of that has been discussed. Everyone is in agreement. Everyone is in the know. You need to part of preparing your loved ones is a lot of the thing that scares people and their friends and family about prison is the uncertainty. Of course, the biggest uncertainty is what will your sentence be or where will you go? Now, what will your sentence be with the feds, you find out on your sentencing date. Mine is in 52 days. Where will you go? With the feds, it's not like state. Feds are a whole different animal. You don't really know. I mean, if you get to be a self-surrender, you typically know a couple weeks after you've been sentenced because you'll get a letter in the mail telling you when and where to turn yourself in. But some people get those letters, and a few days or a week before they're supposed to go turn themselves in, they get another letter saying, just kidding, we're sending you here instead. You know what I mean? Or once you're in the Fed, sometimes they bounce you around for various reasons or really without a reason. If you're a person who's been detained up to your sentencing, you're probably going to be bounced around county spots, in city jails. If you're lucky, a few months, if you're not so lucky, maybe a little year or more. Before you even end up at the institution where you're going to do most of your time. When you never know ahead of time when you're going to be moved or where you're going to be moved. But I think, the biggest uncertainty is not knowing how long you're going to be gone or where you're going to be. Now, once we get that out of the way, once we get sentencing out of the way, so we know as much as we can possibly know, the other big uncertainty and concern tends to be, well, what's going to happen when you come home? What are your expectations when you come home? What can other people expect from you? So a lot of, if you want to prepare your prisons for your prisons, your loved ones for your incarceration. You need to have a lot of very candid conversations about the situation, about what is realistic to expect at your sentencing, about what is worst case scenario, what is best case scenario, what the game plan is moving forward in all of those scenarios, where you will likely or where you may do your time at, and what that means for them as far as visitation and stuff. You need to definitely prepare them, make sure they know how to send money on your books. If there's multiple methods, make sure they're very aware of that. Personally, I started a Facebook group for my small immediate circle, with information on how to write me, different ways to put money on my books, even some screenshots of some wish lists for books I'd like to read they could send me while I'm in there. I mean, all type of information. You should probably do the same, or at least make sure all your people know, what they can expect, of you when you come home, and time frames for this. What are your living arrangements going to be? What's the expectation there? What type of support do you realistically expect from them? And let them know if they can't provide support, that's okay too. Because they didn't put you in this situation. Don't try to guilt people into doing more than what they're comfortable doing. And more importantly, at that point in the game, you certainly need to have a game plan, maybe a plan A and a plan B, or A, B, and C for when you come home, as far as where you're going to live, where you're going to work, how you're going to reintegrate, how you're going to, if there's a custody situation involving minor children, how you're going to navigate that. You need to really kind of get all your ducks in a row and make sure that the people around you, your immediate circle, not necessarily coworkers and neighbors, but your friends and family, your immediate small circle, that they are aware of all of these things. When they write you in prison, do they have to use special paper, special pens? Can they put perfume or stickers or send crayon drawings in the mail to you? All these things you need to research and find out, and you need to pass this information onto your circle. So my advice for preparing your loved ones for your incarceration is be honest, be forthright, be realistic. This is the time to put on the happy face, the strong face, and just push forward. Do not make yourself a burden emotionally and mentally more than what you already have to be because of the situation. Certainly have a lot of reentry plans and make sure the people around you are on board with those and are aware of them. And also make sure your people know, how to visit you, what they can wear, how they can write you, how they can put money on your books. If you're going to a state facility, a lot of those have websites you can send packages, commissary packages. Feds, we ain't got that. But just really ultimately it boils down to, inform yourself and your loved ones as thoroughly and as broad spectrum as possible. And definitely, just like you need to prepare yourself for all the inevitables and possible, scenarios that may play out, you need to prepare them for that as well. Don't let them get hit with a curveball that you've seen coming. So I hope this information has been helpful to some. I think, the hardest part of preparing your loved ones is preparing small children and really anyone who doesn't have the capacity to fully understand things. But, do what you can while you can, and, we'll cross these bridges as we come to them. So good day, God bless, and I hope this video has been helpful.